The morning I dropped Lucas at the rehab center, Alma called me shaking. "Mr. Beckett, don't go to the shop. Don't go home. Check the cameras. Please." My hands went cold. I opened the security app right there in the parking lot. Engine still running. Dust from the Oklahoma highway still settling on the windshield. And there, on my phone screen, inside my own garage, the shop my grandfather built with his bare hands 60 years ago, my wife stood watching while a man I barely knew crouched beneath my workbench and shoved a black duffel bag behind the tool rack. He stood up. She kissed him. Then she looked directly at the camera and smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an accident. A smile that said everything was going exactly the way she planned. But let me go back. Let me start from the beginning of that morning, because that is where everything changed. 5:45. The sky over Tulsa was just starting to bleed orange along the horizon, the kind of summer dawn that promises heat before you even step outside. I sat in my truck, a beat-up Chevy Silverado, with 230,000 miles, and a passenger door that stuck if you didn't lift the handle just right. Lucas was supposed to be outside 5 minutes ago. I checked my phone. Nothing. I honked once, short, the way I always did when he was running late. The front door opened. Lucas came out slow, backpack over one shoulder, hood up despite the heat. 22 years old, 6'1", and somehow he looked smaller than he did at 14. His face was pale. Thin. The kind of thin that happens when a person stops eating regularly and starts depending on something else to get through the day. He climbed into the truck without a word, pulled the door shut, stared out the window. I tried. "You have everything? Clothes? Paperwork? The insurance forms?" A nod. "Nothing more." "Lucas, the intake coordinator said they need your ID and the referral letter from Dr. Haynes. Did you grab those?" "Yeah." One word. Flat. Empty. I pulled out of the driveway and turned east toward the highway. The house shrank in the mirror. 26 years I had lived in that house, raised my son there, built the back porch with my own hands the summer Lucas turned 5. The same summer he decided he wanted to be a fireman and wore a plastic helmet everywhere he went, even to church. Now I was driving him to a rehabilitation facility 40 miles outside the city, and he would not look at me. The highway stretched flat and endless, the way Oklahoma highways do. Nothing but scrub brush, power lines, and heat shimmer. I kept both hands on the wheel. Lucas kept his forehead pressed against the glass. "I know this is hard," I said quietly, "but this is the right call. 30 days. Clean start. We will figure the rest out after." Silence. "Lucas, can we just not do this, Dad?" His voice cracked on the last word. Not anger. Something worse. Shame. The kind of shame that sits so deep a person cannot meet your eyes because they are afraid of what you will see. I swallowed what I wanted to say and drove. When did this happen? When did the kid who used to race me to the mailbox every evening, who begged me to let him help change the oil on Mr. Henderson's Buick, who told me at 16 that he wanted to run the shop someday, when did that kid disappear? I thought about the night I found the pills in his dresser drawer. The argument that followed. Nadine stepping between us, telling me to calm down, telling me I was overreacting. He is 22, Frank. He is an adult. You cannot control him forever. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had pushed too hard. Or maybe I had not pushed hard enough. Either way, I was losing him. And I did not know how to stop it. The rehab center sat at the end of a gravel road, a cluster of low beige buildings surrounded by a chain-link fence and a parking lot full of minivans. A sign near the entrance read Prairie Ridge Recovery Center in letters that were peeling at the edges. Not fancy. Not the kind of place you see in movies. But it was what our insurance covered. And the counselor came recommended by a veteran buddy of mine who had gone through his own battles. I parked. Lucas grabbed his backpack before I could turn off the engine. "Lucas, hold on." He paused. One hand on the door handle. I wanted to say something that mattered. Something a father says to his son at a moment like this. Something that would cut through the walls he had built around himself and reach the kid underneath. But the words jammed in my throat. All I managed was, "I will be here when you come out. Okay? I am not going anywhere." He looked at me for the first time that morning. Just a glance. Maybe half a second. And in that half second, I saw it. Not anger. Not resentment. Fear. Pure, bone-deep fear. The kind that lives in you when you know you have done something terrible and you are not sure anyone can fix it. Then he was gone. Door shut. Gravel crunching under his sneakers. He walked through the front entrance without looking back. No hug. No wave. No love you, Dad. Just gone. I sat there with the engine idling, staring at the glass doors long after they closed behind him. The air conditioner hummed. A mockingbird sang from a fence post nearby, painfully cheerful. I thought about Lucas at 10, sitting cross-legged on the shop floor while I showed him how to rebuild a carburetor. Those big brown eyes, full of wonder. "Dad, how do you know which part goes where?" I had told him, "You learn by paying attention. You watch, you listen, and when something does not look right, you ask why." I had not followed my own advice. Not for a long time. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Thought it might be Nadine asking when I would be home. But the name on the screen was Alma Gutierrez. Alma had cleaned our house and worked part-time at the shop for 11 years. She never called unless something was wrong, I answered. "Alma, what is going on?" Her voice was trembling so hard I could barely understand her. "Mr. Beckett, you need to check the cameras. The ones at the shop. Please. Right now. What happened? Do not go to the shop. Do not go home. Just look at the cameras first. Please. Mr. Beckett. Please." The line went dead. My pulse kicked. I opened the security app. 4 feeds. Front lot. Back entrance. Main garage. Office. I had installed the system myself 3 years ago, after someone broke into the parts storage one night. 4 cameras. Nothing fancy, but clear enough. I tapped the main garage feed and rewound to 6:15 that morning. The footage loaded, and my chest caved in. There was Nadine, my wife of 25 years, standing in the center of the shop, arms crossed, watching. Beside her, a man in a dark jacket, police style, clean cut, calm. Kyle Mercer. I had met him twice at a barbecue Nadine's coworker hosted last spring. She had introduced him as a private investigator she knew through the hospital. Kyle crouched beside my workbench, unzipped a black duffel bag, and began pulling things out. I could not see exactly what, but he shoved them behind the bottom shelf, deep, hidden. Then he stood, brushed off his hands, pulled out his phone, and took photos. 3 shots. Workbench. License plate of my truck, visible through the open bay door. The shop sign. Nadine stepped closer. He put his arm around her waist. She leaned into him. He whispered something. She laughed. Then she looked at the camera, the one I had mounted near the ceiling, the one she had watched me install, and she smiled. I do not know how long I sat there. Could have been 2 minutes. Could have been 20. The parking lot was empty, except for a minivan near the entrance and a maintenance truck at the far end. The mockingbird was still singing. The sun was climbing higher, pressing heat through the windshield. But I felt nothing. My body had gone cold the way it used to in Iraq, right before a convoy rolled into hostile territory. The brain shuts down everything that is not essential. Fear, grief, confusion, it all goes into a box. What is left is focus. I rewound the footage and watched again. 6:14 in the morning. The shop was dark. Then the side door opened from the inside. Nadine stepped out first, keys in her hand. My spare set. The ones I kept on a hook behind the register. She held the door open, and Kyle Mercer walked in carrying the black duffel bag. He moved like he had done this before. No hesitation. No looking around. Straight to the main workbench, the one my grandfather had built from railroad ties in 1961. The one I had rebuilt twice and never replaced because some things you do not throw away. Kyle unzipped the bag. I pinched the screen to zoom in, but the resolution was not sharp enough to identify the contents clearly. Dark shapes. Something wrapped in cloth. Something metallic. He arranged them carefully behind the bottom shelf, pushing them deep against the wall where no one would see unless they were looking. Then he pulled a smaller package from his jacket pocket, rectangular, taped, and wedged it between two paint cans on the shelf above. The whole process took less than 4 minutes. He stood up, brushed dust off his knees, and pulled out his phone. 3 photos. First, the workbench area, wide angle. Second, my truck visible through the open bay door, license plate clear in the morning light. Third, the shop sign out front. Beckett's Auto Repair. Established 1963. My grandfather's name, in faded letters beneath it. He was building a case, documenting evidence that would tie everything in that duffel bag directly to me in my shop. Then the audio caught something. The camera microphone was cheap, designed for basic surveillance, but the shop was quiet enough that voices carried. Kyle put his phone away and turned to Nadine. His voice came through thin but clear enough. Done. Once the feds find this, he is finished. The shop, the house, all of it. Ours by the end of the month. Nadine did not flinch. She did not ask questions. She did not hesitate. She stepped forward, put her hands on his chest, and kissed him. Not a quick kiss. The kind of kiss that belongs to two people who have been doing this for a long time. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "What about Lucas?" she asked. Kyle shrugged. "The kid will do what we need him to do. He is in too deep to say no." Nadine nodded slowly. "And if Frank fights back?" Kyle laughed. A short, confident sound. "Frank is not going to fight back. He does not even know what is happening. By the time he figures it out, he will be in handcuffs." They walked out through the side door together. Nadine locked it behind them. Kyle's black sedan was parked on the street behind the shop, out of view from the main road. He drove away first. Nadine waited 2 minutes, then followed in her car toward downtown. Routine. Practiced. Like they had rehearsed the choreography. I set the phone down on the dashboard. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something deeper. 25 years. 25 years I had shared a bed with that woman, cooked breakfast with her on Sunday mornings, held her hand in the hospital the night Lucas was born, rebuilt the back porch because she wanted a bigger space for her garden. 25 years of believing that whatever we had was real, and she had just stood in my shop, the shop that had been in my family for 3 generations, and watched a man plant evidence that would send me to prison. My phone buzzed. A text from Nadine. "Hey honey, when are you coming home?" I made iced tea. Iced tea. The same tea she had been poisoning for months, though I did not know that yet. Not then. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type something. Anything. Why? How long? Was any of it real? But I knew better. The moment I confronted her, she would call Kyle. They would move the timeline up. Whatever was in that duffel bag would be reported before I could do anything about it. I left the message unanswered and started thinking. Go to the police. That was the obvious move. Walk into a precinct. Show them the footage. Let them handle it. But handle what exactly? A video of a man putting a bag under a workbench. No clear view of the contents. A conversation caught on a cheap microphone that a defense lawyer would argue was distorted. Taken out of context. Possibly fabricated. And the moment officers searched my shop, whatever Kyle planted would be found, and I would be the one answering questions. I had seen it happen to guys I served with. Evidence shows up. The accusation sticks. The truth takes months to untangle, and by then, Your name is already destroyed. If I walked into a police station right now, I was betting everything on strangers believing a man whose wife and son were ready to testify against him. I was not ready to make that bet. Not yet. I needed to see what was in that bag first. Needed to understand the full scope of what they were planning. And I needed to talk to Alma. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The text was short. Mr. Beckett, this is Alma. I am using my niece's phone. They are watching yours. Do not call me on your number. Do not go to the shop. Do not go home. Meet me at St. Michael's Church on Peoria Avenue. The parking lot behind the building. 2 o'clock. I will explain everything. Please be careful. Kyle is not who you think he is. He has people. I read it twice. Then a third time. Alma Gutierrez had worked for my family for 11 years. She cleaned the house twice a week, helped out at the shop when we were shorthanded during busy seasons, organized the office when the paperwork got out of control. She was quiet, thorough, and she noticed everything. If Alma said Kyle had people, I believed her. I checked the time. 8:47 in the morning. 5 hours until 2 o'clock. 5 hours to figure out what to do with the ticking bomb sitting inside my shop. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed west, back toward Tulsa. The sun was fully up now, blazing white against a cloudless sky. Heat waves rippled off the asphalt ahead, making the road shimmer like water. Behind me, the rehab center grew smaller in the mirror until it disappeared completely. My son was in there, fighting to get clean. My wife was at home, drinking the iced tea she had made for me, waiting for me to walk into a trap she had built with her own hands. And somewhere in this city, a man I had met twice was photographing evidence that would put me in a federal prison. 5 hours. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white and drove toward the only person in the world who was trying to save me. I had 5 hours before the meeting with Alma. 5 hours is a long time when your life is collapsing, and a short time when you need to think clearly. I spent the first hour driving in circles through East Tulsa, checking mirrors, watching for anyone following, a habit from the Army. When you suspect surveillance, you do not drive in a straight line. You make random turns. You double back. You watch for the vehicle that mirrors your rhythm, not your speed. Nobody was following. Not yet. By 9:30, I had a plan. Not a good one, but the only one that made sense. I needed to know what Kyle had planted in my shop. If I went to the police with camera footage alone, they would investigate, sure. But investigation meant searching the premises. Searching the premises meant finding whatever was hidden behind that workbench. And the moment they found it, I would be the primary suspect. My name on the building. My fingerprints on every surface. My truck parked outside with my license plate already photographed by the man who put it there. I had to get to that duffel bag before anyone else did. I stopped at a hardware store on East 11th Street. Paid cash for a box of latex gloves, a pack of gallon-sized Ziploc bags, and a small flashlight. The cashier was a kid, maybe 19. Headphones in, barely glanced at me. I also grabbed a roll of paper towels and a bottle of water. Walked out looking like a man running errands on a Tuesday morning. Nothing suspicious. Nothing memorable. Next, I found an ATM at a gas station on Admiral Boulevard. Withdrew $2,000 in cash, the maximum the machine would allow. I turned off location services on my phone immediately after. It would not stop them completely if they were truly tracking me, but it might slow things down. Buy me hours. Maybe a day. Then I drove to the shop. Beckett's Auto Repair sat on a wide lot off Route 66, between a used tire dealer and a barbecue restaurant that had been closed for 3 years. The main building was cinder block and corrugated metal, painted green sometime in the 1980s. My grandfather had built the original structure himself. My father had expanded it. I had rewired the entire place, replaced the roof, and added the office extension when I took over 15 years ago. 3 generations of Becketts had turned wrenches in that building. The sign out front still had my grandfather's name on it. Harold Beckett. Established 1963. I parked 2 blocks away on a side street, behind a dumpster where the truck would not be visible from the main road. Walked the rest of the way on foot, staying close to the fence line. It was 10:15. The shop did not open until noon on Tuesdays. Eddie Voss, my only full-time employee, would not arrive until 11:30. I had roughly an hour. The side door, the one Nadine had used that morning. I had installed it myself during a renovation 8 years ago. A secondary entrance that opened into the storage area behind the main garage. Most people did not even know it existed. The lock was a standard deadbolt. I had the key on my ring. I pulled on the gloves before touching anything. Stepped inside. The shop smelled the way it always did. Motor oil, brake cleaner, the faint sweetness of old rubber. Familiar as my own skin. But this morning, it felt hostile. Like I was trespassing in someone else's territory. I moved quickly to the main workbench. Crouched down. My knees protested. The way 53-year-old knees do when you ask them to bend fast. I aimed the flashlight behind the bottom shelf. There it was. The black duffel bag, pushed deep against the wall, exactly where I had seen Kyle place it on the footage. I reached in carefully, gripped the strap, and pulled it out. Heavy. Maybe 15, 20 pounds. I unzipped it on the shop floor, hands steady the way they had been steady when I disarmed IEDs outside Fallujah. Whatever was inside, I needed to see it, needed to understand exactly what they were trying to do to me. The first item was a handgun. Semi-automatic. 9mm. I tilted it under the flashlight. The serial number on the slide had been filed off. Ground smooth. Completely untraceable. Possession of a firearm with a removed serial number was a federal offense, 5 years minimum. Beneath the gun, 3 bundles of cash. $100 bills, banded tightly. I did not count them, but each bundle looked like it held around $5,000. $15,000 total. The kind of money that screams drug deal or laundering operation when found in a mechanic's shop during a federal raid. And then the smaller package Kyle had wedged between the paint cans on the upper shelf. I reached up and pulled it down. Rectangular. Wrapped in brown packing tape. I slit the tape with my pocket knife and peeled it open. 4 small plastic bags. White powder. Maybe 30 grams each. A black marker had been used to write initials on each bag. FB. Frank Beckett. My initials. On bags of what I had to assume was cocaine or methamphetamine. Sitting in my shop, next to a gun with no serial number and $15,000 in cash. I photographed everything. Every angle. Every detail. The duffel bag, the gun, the cash bundles, the bags with my initials, the shelf where they had been hidden, the workbench my grandfather had built. I took 47 photos in total, checking each one for clarity before moving on. Then I sealed everything into the Ziploc bags, carefully, methodically, treating each item like the piece of evidence it was, because that is exactly what it would become when the time was right. I could not leave it here. The moment Kyle tipped off the authorities, and he would, they would come with a warrant. If the evidence was still in the shop, I was done. But if the evidence was gone, Kyle would know someone had moved it. He would know I had seen the cameras. The clock would accelerate. I made a decision. I took the duffel bag with me, zipped it back up, wiped down every surface I had touched despite the gloves, and slipped out the side door. Locked it behind me. Walked back to my truck with a bag full of federal charges slung over my shoulder like I was carrying tools to a job site. I shoved the duffel bag under a tarp in the truck bed, between a toolbox and a stack of lumber I had been meaning to drop off at a job, hidden in plain sight. Then I sat in the cab, pulled off the gloves, and let myself breathe for 30 seconds. The clock on the dash read 10:51. 3 hours until I met Alma. I drove north toward Peoria Avenue, taking side streets, avoiding cameras where I could. The city moved around me the way it always did. Traffic lights, convenience stores, kids on bicycles, a man watering his lawn. Normal life. Ordinary Tuesday. Except nothing about this Tuesday was ordinary, and nothing about my life was normal anymore. At 1:45, I pulled into the parking lot behind St. Michael's Catholic Church. The building was old, red brick, a white steeple that leaned slightly to the east. The parking lot was mostly empty. Tuesday afternoon. No services. Just a gray Honda Civic parked near the back fence, under the shadow of an elm tree. Al-Masjid. She was standing beside it, arms wrapped tight around herself despite the heat. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Her eyes were red and swollen. In her hands, she held a brown envelope, thick, pressing it against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. When she saw my truck, something broke in her face, relief and grief and fear all at once. I parked, walked toward her. Before I could say a word, she gripped my arm with both hands. "Mr. Beckett, I am so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I was afraid. I was so afraid." "Stop," I said. "You are helping me now. That is what matters." But she did not stop. She kept gripping my arm, fingers trembling against my shirt, tears cutting lines through the dust on her face. Alma Gutierrez was not a woman who cried easily. In 11 years, I had seen her cry exactly twice. Once when her daughter almost died. Once when her daughter did die. So when Alma cried, "You paid attention." I guided her to a concrete bench near the back wall of the church, shaded by an elm tree. The parking lot was empty. No foot traffic, no witnesses, just cicadas and the distant hum of highway noise. She sat down, pressed a tissue to her eyes, and took a long breath. Then, she looked at me with an expression I recognized, the same one she had worn 6 years ago when she came to my kitchen holding a hospital bill and shaking so hard she could barely speak. "How much do you know?" she asked. "Not enough." "Tell me everything." 4 nights ago, I was cleaning the upstairs hallway. Late. After 10. You were already asleep. Mrs. Beckett was in the office. Door half open. Phone on speaker. I could hear everything. Who was she talking to? Kyle Mercer. The name dropped like a stone. Mrs. Beckett said, "Once the shop is raided, Frank goes down. Federal charges. The gun alone is 5 years. Add the drugs and the cash. No judge will grant bail. We file for emergency asset transfer the same week. The shop, the house, the savings, all of it." My throat went dry, and Kyle laughed. He said, "That is the easy part. The hard part was the kid, but I handled him. Lucas." I whispered. Alma nodded. Mrs. Beckett asked, "Will he hold up?" Kyle said, "The kid owes $75,000 to people who break legs for a living. I paid 20 and promised the rest after. He will say whatever we need." His father was violent, unstable, PTSD episodes. Between Lucas's testimony and the evidence in the shop, no court in Oklahoma will side with Frank Beckett. The world narrowed. I could feel my pulse in my temples, hard and slow. "Lucas does not know about the gun," Alma added quietly, "or the drugs. He thinks this is just a bad divorce. He does not know they are trying to put you in prison." I rubbed my face. My son, 22 years old, drowning in debt, manipulated by a man who knew exactly how to exploit shame, and Nadine had let it happen, had planned it. Alma reached for the brown envelope and pressed it into my hands. Warm from the sun, heavier than it looked. "A USB drive inside," she said. "I've been copying files from Mrs. Beckett's laptop for 2 weeks. Every time I cleaned her office, I plugged it in. She never locks it, never logs out. She does not notice when I am in the room." Bitterness edged her voice. 11 years. I am invisible to her. Alma, if they find out, they will not. I know where she hides things. I know her laptop password because she typed it in front of me 100 times and never once thought I was paying attention. She paused. Met my eyes. Do you remember 6 years ago, Mr. Beckett? I did. Every detail. Daniela Gutierrez. Alma's daughter. 23 at the time. A man ran a red light on Peoria Avenue at 11:40 on a Friday night and hit her car broadside, crushed the driver's side door into her body. 3. Broken ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. 9 hours of surgery at St. Francis Hospital. The bill was $90,000. Insurance covered part, but the out-of-network surgeons left Alma facing $62,000 in debt. She came to my kitchen on a Monday morning, hands shaking, and asked if she could borrow money, said she would pay it back over 10 years, said she would work weekends, holidays, anything. I did not lend her money. I sold 3 cars from my collection. A 1968 Mustang Fastback I had been restoring for 4 years. A 1972 Chevelle SS my father and I had rebuilt together the summer before he died. And a 1955 Ford F-100 I had bought at auction the year Lucas was born. 3 cars. 3 pieces of my history. I sold them in 9 days and handed Alma a check for $65,000. Told her it was not a loan. Told Nadine the money came from a parts deal. She never questioned it. Daniela survived. Finished her nursing degree. She was working at a hospital in Oklahoma City now. Alma's voice pulled me back to the bench. You saved my daughter's life. You sold your cars. You never asked for anything back. She wiped her eyes. Daniela is alive. Because of you. And I made a promise that day. I said to God, if this man ever needs me, I will be there. She straightened her shoulders. So, now, I am here. And I am not looking away. I could not speak. I just squeezed her hand and held it. After a moment, she pulled back. All business now. There is something else. Something I have not told you yet. What? Your tea. The iced tea Mrs. Beckett makes for you every night. A cold thread pulled through my stomach. She keeps a small bottle in the bathroom cabinet. Behind the cotton swabs. No label. I have seen her take it out many times. She puts drops in your tea every evening before you come inside from the shop. 3 drops. Sometimes 4. Stirs it and sets the glass on the counter like it is nothing. I stared at her. The bench. The elm tree. The church steeple. Everything tilted slightly, like the world had shifted 2 degrees off its axis. How long? 7 months, Mr. Beckett. Maybe more. I first noticed the bottle in November. She paused. You have been different. Shaking hands, forgetting things, getting angry for no reason. I thought it was stress. But it is not, is it? I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. They had been trembling for months. I had blamed it on long hours, on Lucas's problems, on getting older. Nadine had told me the same thing. You are just tired, Frank. Here. Drink your tea. Relax. Every night. For 7 months. She had poured poison into my glass, handed it to me with a smile, and watched me drink it. My daughter Daniela, Alma said quietly. She is a nurse. She can test your blood, your hair. She says, if it is what she thinks, benzodiazepine, at that dosage, over that many months. Alma's voice broke. Mr. Beckett. She says you could have died. Alma drove away first. I watched her gray Civic turn onto Peoria Avenue and disappear south toward her sister's house in Broken Arrow. I sat in the truck another 2 minutes, scanning the parking lot, the street, the sidewalks. Nothing moved except a stray cat crossing the church lawn. I pulled onto Peoria heading north, the USB drive in my jacket pocket, the duffel bag still hidden under the tarp in the truck bed. The plan was simple. Get somewhere safe. Open the files. understand the full scope of what Nadine and Kyle had built against me, then figure out my next move. I made it 11 blocks before I noticed the tail. Black Dodge Ram. Tinted windows. 2 car lengths back, matching every turn I made without closing the gap. It had been sitting on a side street near the church. I had not noticed it when I arrived because I had been focused on Alma. Careless. The kind of mistake that gets people killed in a combat zone. I tested it. Right on 36th Street. Right on Lewis. Left on 31st. The Ram followed every move, never speeding up, never falling back. Professional. Patient. The way someone follows you when they have been trained to do it. Or when they have done it enough times that training is no longer necessary. Kyle had people. Alma had warned me. Now I was seeing it firsthand. My hands tightened on the wheel. 2 years in Iraq had taught me a few things about being followed. The first rule is simple. Never let them choose the ground. If someone is tailing you, you do not drive home. You do not drive to your destination. You drive to terrain that gives you an advantage and takes away theirs. I knew Tulsa. The way a mechanic knows an engine. Every back road. Every dead end. Every industrial lot. And I knew exactly where I was going. I accelerated onto the Broken Arrow Expressway heading east, weaving through afternoon traffic. The Ram kept pace but fell back slightly, trying to stay inconspicuous. I took the Highway 64 exit without signaling. Fast. Cutting across a lane. The Ram followed, but had to brake hard to make the turn. Good. They were committed. 3 miles east, past the last strip mall, past the storage facilities and the used car lots. The road narrowed into 2 lanes, flanked by scrub brush and chain-link fencing. Industrial territory. Old warehouses. A concrete plant that had shut down in 2008. And beyond that, the thing I was looking for. Macklin Industrial Park. 6 buildings on 12 acres. Abandoned since 2011 when the manufacturing company that owned it went bankrupt. Chain-link fence sagging in places. Parking lots cracked and overgrown. I had done electrical work there 15 years ago, back when the place was still running. I knew the layout. More importantly, I knew what was underneath. Oklahoma sits in the heart of Tornado Alley. Every commercial building built before the 1990s had underground storm shelters. Macklin had 3 of them, connected by maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the entire complex. Utility access, electrical conduits, drainage lines, a network of narrow concrete corridors that most people had forgotten existed. I had not forgotten. I had rewired half of them. I turned hard onto the access road. Gravel sprayed behind the tires. The Ram closed the distance now, no longer pretending. I could see 2 figures through the windshield. Dark jackets. The passenger had his window down. I swerved between 2 warehouse buildings and slammed the brakes beside a loading dock. Grabbed the USB from my pocket, shoved it deep into my jeans. Left the truck running. Left the duffel bag. Ran. Behind me, doors opened. Boots on gravel. A voice. Mr. Beckett. Stop. We just want to talk. Nobody who chases you through an industrial park just wants to talk. I ducked through a gap in the loading dock wall into the first warehouse. Dark inside. The air tasted like rust and old concrete. Shattered windows let in slants of afternoon light that cut across the floor in broken stripes. Debris everywhere. Collapsed shelving. Rusted machinery. The skeleton of a forklift with flat tires. Footsteps behind me. 2 sets. Moving fast. I scanned the floor. There, near the back wall, half hidden beneath a pile of rotting plywood. A metal grate. Storm shelter access. I had installed the electrical panel for this exact hatch in 2007. I hauled the plywood aside. The grate was rusted but not locked. I lifted it with both hands, the metal groaning loud enough to echo off the walls. Below, a steel ladder, descending into blackness. Flashlight beams swept the warehouse entrance behind me. I went down, pulled the grate shut above my head. The clang rang through the tunnel like a bell. I froze on the ladder, pressed flat against the rungs, breathing through my mouth to stay quiet. Voices above. Muffled. Where did he go? Check the back. He is in here somewhere. I climbed down the rest of the ladder. My feet hit concrete. The tunnel was narrow, maybe 4 feet high, forcing me into a crouch. I turned on my phone's flashlight, keeping it pointed at the ground. Concrete walls, slick with moisture, the smell of mold and stagnant water. A rat scattered ahead of me into the dark. I moved. Left fork. Then right. Then left again. I knew this layout. The tunnels connected all 6 buildings in the complex. 3 storm shelters, each with its own access point. If I could reach the north shelter, it had an exit that opened behind the concrete plant, out of sight from the main road. Behind me, the grate scraped open. A flashlight beam shot down the shaft. He went underground. Come on. I killed my phone light and moved by feel. One hand on the wall. Knees screaming. The sound of my own breathing deafening in the enclosed space. Their footsteps echoed behind me, but the tunnel branched in 4 directions. They would have to guess. I chose the northeast branch. Moved as fast as I could in a crouch, counting steps the way I used to count paces on night patrols in Anbar province. 200 steps. 300. The tunnel angled upward slightly. I felt another ladder. Climbed. The hatch at the top was heavier, sealed tighter. I braced my shoulder against it and pushed. It gave with a groan of corroded hinges. I emerged behind the concrete plant. Open sky. Late afternoon sun blinding after the darkness below. I crouched behind a rusted dumpster and listened. Wind through broken fences. A distant truck horn on the highway. No footsteps. No voices. I had lost them. 20 minutes later, I was 2 miles north on foot, walking through a residential neighborhood that backed up against a creek bed. Found a payphone outside a laundromat. Called a cab. Paid cash. Gave an address 3 blocks from where I actually needed to go. The second storm shelter was smaller. An old community tornado shelter beneath an abandoned elementary school on the east side. I had done repair work on the ventilation system 4 years ago when the city contracted my shop. Concrete walls. Steel door. Dry. Hidden. No one had been inside in years. I locked the door behind me, sat on the concrete floor, and pulled the USB drive from my pocket. My hands were still shaking. My knees throbbed. My shirt was soaked through with tunnel water and sweat, but I was alive. And I still had the drive. I plugged it into my phone with an adapter cable and opened the file directory. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. 247 files. Folders labeled by month. Email chains. Bank statements. Legal documents. And one folder at the bottom that stopped my breath. Kyle Lucas correspondence. 47 files. The storm shelter was 8 feet by 12. Concrete floor. Concrete walls. A single steel door with a deadbolt. I had repaired myself 4 years ago. No windows. No ventilation except a 6-inch pipe in the ceiling that let in a thin whistle of outside air. It smelled like damp cement and old dust. A metal shelf on the far wall held a first aid kit, 2 jugs of water, and a box of emergency candles that had probably been there since the school closed in 2014. I lit one of the candles. The flame threw long shadows across the walls. Then I sat on the concrete floor, back against the wall, phone in one hand, USB adapter in the other, and started reading. The first folder was labeled NK Correspondence. Nadine and Kyle. 203 emails spanning 6 months, December through June. I opened the earliest one and worked forward. December was careful, cautious. The tone of 2 people testing boundaries. December 9th. Kyle to Nadine. Had a great time last night. Let me know when you are free again. K. December 14th. Nadine to Kyle. Friday works. Frank has a job in Broken Arrow. Will not be home until late. N. December 23rd. Kyle to Nadine. Thinking about what you said. About wanting out. I meant what I told you. I can help. But we need to be smart about it. K. Wanting out. She had been planning to leave me since at least December. Maybe earlier. While I was hanging Christmas lights on the house and buying Lucas a new jacket for the holidays, my wife was sitting in my office, emailing another man about how to get rid of me. January shifted the tone. The emails became longer, more detailed, less about the affair, and more about strategy. January 12th. Kyle to Nadine. I looked into your financial situation. Joint accounts, property, the shop. If Frank fights the divorce, you could be tied up in court for 2 years. He built that shop. A judge will not just hand it over. We need leverage. Real leverage. K. January 19th. Nadine to Kyle. What kind of leverage? N. January 21st. Kyle to Nadine. The kind that takes him off the board entirely. If Frank has a criminal record, everything changes. Custody. Asset division. His credibility in court drops to 0. I have done this before. Trust me, Guy. I have done this before. I read that line 3 times. Kyle Mercer had not stumbled into this plan. He had a playbook, a method, and Nadine had handed him the keys. February got darker. The emails shifted from abstract strategy to concrete planning. February 8th. Kyle to Nadine. I have contacts who can supply what we need. Untraceable firearm. Cash. Enough product to make it look like distribution. We plant it at the shop. Anonymous tip to the ATF. They raid. Frank goes down on federal weapons and narcotics charges. Minimum 5 years. While he is sitting in a cell, you file for emergency asset transfer. The shop, the house, savings. All of it moves to your name within 60 days. K. February 10th. Nadine's reply. How much will this cost? N. February 10th. Kyle. $35,000. Cash. Covers the materials, my contacts, and the legal setup. I will handle everything. You just need to keep acting normal. K. February 12th. Nadine. I can pull it from the joint account. Frank never checks the statements. He trusts me with the finances. N. He trusts me. 2 words that burned worse than anything else on that screen. 25 years of marriage. And she had weaponized my trust like it was just another tool in her drawer. I kept scrolling. March. The money started moving. March 3rd. A bank statement attached to an email. Nadine had transferred $18,000 from our joint savings to a personal account I did not know existed. Account opened in January, her name only. March 15th. Another transfer. $12,000. Same destination. March 28th. A wire transfer of $35,000 from her personal account to a company called Granite Ridge Consulting. I had never heard of it, but the routing number matched a document in another folder. An invoice from Kyle Mercer for risk management services. Granite Ridge was Kyle's front company. My wife had used my money to pay for the operation that would destroy me. April brought the timeline into focus. April 4th. Kyle to Nadine. Package is being assembled. Firearm is clean. Product is ready. I will plant everything the morning Frank takes Lucas to the rehab facility. He will be gone at least 2 hours. That gives us plenty of time. K. April 4th. The email was dated 5 weeks before this morning. They had been waiting for me to take Lucas to rehab, waiting for the one morning they knew I would be out of the house and away from the shop long enough for Kyle to walk in, plant the evidence, and walk out. Lucas's addiction had not just been convenient for them. It had been part of the schedule. April 18th. Nadine to Kyle. What about after? Once he is arrested, how fast can we move? N. April 18th. Kyle. Fast. I have a lawyer lined up. Michael Whitfield. Specializes in emergency asset seizure. The moment Frank is in custody, Whitfield files for temporary control of all joint assets. Shop included. Given the federal charges, no judge will deny it. You will have full control within 2 weeks. K. April 22nd. Nadine to Kyle. And if Frank somehow gets bail? N. April 22nd. Kyle. He will not. Federal weapons charges with narcotics. No prior record helps. But the amount of product we are planting puts it in trafficking territory. Bail will be denied or set so high he cannot make it. And if by some miracle he does get out, I have another layer ready. K. Another layer. I would find out what that meant soon enough. The psychiatric evaluation. The fake diagnosis. The plan to have me committed. But I did not know that yet. Not in this moment. Sitting on a concrete floor in a storm shelter, with a candle burning low, and my phone battery dropping toward 30%. What I knew was this. My wife and her lover had spent 6 months engineering my destruction. They had used my money to fund it. They had used my son's addiction to time it. And they had planned every detail with the precision of people who had no doubt it would work. I closed the email folder and sat in the candlelight. The shelter was silent except for the whistle of air through the vent pipe and the faint drip of condensation somewhere behind the wall. My hands had stopped shaking, not because I was calm, because the fear had burned through and left something colder in its place. I opened the next folder. Financial records. And the first document confirmed what I already suspected. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my future. The financial records folder held 41 documents. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoices, scanned checks. I opened them one by one, the candle burning low beside me. My phone battery at 26%. The transfers started in January and ran through May. Each one pulled from our joint savings account, the one I had set up when we got married. The one that required both signatures for withdrawals over $5,000. Except Nadine had forged my signature, or more likely, Kyle had shown her how. The bank had never flagged it. 25 years of clean history. No reason to suspect. January, 18,000. February, 12,000. March, 35,000 to Granite Ridge. April, 8,500 to a legal firm I did not recognize. May, 9,000 to a private medical consulting company called Clearview Behavioral Associates. Total, $82,500. Gone. My retirement. The emergency fund I had built over 15 years of 6-day work weeks. The money I had set aside to help Lucas if he ever got clean and wanted to start over. The invoice from Clearview Behavioral Associates stopped me cold. $9,000 for a comprehensive psychiatric assessment and preliminary diagnostic report. Patient name, Frank David Beckett. Date of birth, Social Security number, home address. All correct, all mine. I opened the attached document. A 4-page psychiatric evaluation. My name at the top. My medical history, partially accurate, partially fabricated. The evaluating physician was listed as Dr. Richard Keene, licensed psychiatrist, Oklahoma City. I had never met Dr. Richard Keene. I had never been evaluated by any psychiatrist. But the document read as though I had been a patient for months. Patient presents with symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, compounded by paranoid ideation and intermittent explosive episodes. Patient demonstrates marked cognitive decline, including short-term memory deficits, impaired judgment, and difficulty maintaining stable emotional regulation. Given the severity of symptoms and patient's refusal to engage in voluntary treatment, this evaluator recommends consideration of involuntary psychiatric hold under Oklahoma statute for further evaluation and stabilization. Involuntary psychiatric hold. They were not just planning to send me to prison. They had a backup. If the federal charges did not stick, if something went wrong with the planted evidence, they would have me committed. Locked in a psychiatric facility, declared mentally unfit. And once that diagnosis was on record, Nadine could petition for emergency guardianship over all marital assets. The shop, the house, everything. Kyle's another layer. I scrolled back through the emails looking for context. Found it in a March exchange. March 22nd. Kyle to Nadine. The psych evaluation is ready. Dr. Keene owed me a favor from a situation in Dallas 2 years ago. The report looks legitimate. If the feds do not move fast enough, we use this as our insurance policy. File for an emergency psychiatric hold. Frank gets committed. You get control. Either way, he loses. K. March 22nd. Nadine. What if he fights it? What if he gets a second opinion? N. March 23rd. Kyle. By the time he fights it, the drugs in his system will confirm everything in the report. Memory loss, mood instability, impaired cognition. The benzodiazepine will show up in his blood work. Any doctor who examines him will see a man who matches the diagnosis perfectly. That is the beauty of it. We are not faking his symptoms, we are creating them. K. We are not faking his symptoms. We are creating them. I set the phone down on the concrete floor and stared at the candle flame until my vision blurred. 7 months. Every night, Nadine had stood in our kitchen, opened that unmarked bottle, and dropped poison into my glass of iced tea. She had handed it to me with a smile, asked me about my day, watched me drink it, then gone upstairs and emailed her lover about how well the plan was progressing. The symptoms had crept in slowly. First, I noticed my hands shaking in the mornings. Then, the forgetting. Small things at first. Where I left my keys. Whether I had locked the shop. Then bigger things. Appointments I could not remember making. Conversations I had no memory of. I snapped at Eddie one afternoon for something he had not done. Yelled at a customer over a misunderstanding about a part. I had apologized both times, confused by my own anger. Nadine had been sympathetic. Concerned. You are working too hard, Frank. You need to rest. Here. I made your tea. And every night, I drank it. Because I trusted her. The psychiatric evaluation was designed to catch me at my worst. When the accumulated months of drugging had made me slow, forgetful, irritable. When my own behavior would confirm every lie they had written on those 4 pages, I picked up the phone again. Battery at 19%. I needed to move fast. I composed a text to Alma on my burner number. Tell Daniela I need the test done as soon as possible. Hair sample. Blood draw. I need documented proof of what is in my system before it clears. Can she do it tomorrow? Alma replied within 3 minutes. She says, yes. She has a friend at a private lab in Oklahoma City who can rush the results, 24 to 48 hours. She needs to see you in person to take the samples. Where are you? I hesitated. Giving my location to anyone, even Alma, was a risk. But Daniela was the only person who could provide the medical evidence I needed. Without lab results confirming the benzodiazepine, the psychiatric evaluation was just my word against a doctor's report. And Kyle had made sure the doctor's report looked flawless. I typed back, I will come to her. Tell me where and when. Tomorrow morning. 7. Daniela's apartment in Oklahoma City. I will send the address. I plugged the phone into a portable charger I had grabbed from the truck and set it on the floor. The candle had burned down to a stub, the flame barely an inch tall. I lit a second one. The shelter was cold now. Night had settled in outside, and the concrete walls held no warmth. I pulled my jacket tight and leaned back against the wall. $82,500 stolen. A federal frame-up, engineered to the last detail. A psychiatric evaluation designed to have me locked away, and a 7-month poisoning regimen that was slowly turning me into the exact person they needed me to be. Unstable. Unreliable. Unfit. Every exit had been sealed. Every contingency planned. Kyle had built a machine designed to grind me into nothing, and Nadine had funded it with my own money. But they had missed one thing. They had not counted on Alma. They had not counted on the invisible woman in the room, the one they never noticed, the one who noticed everything. I opened the last folder I had not yet touched. Kyle Lucas correspondence. 47 files. And whatever was inside, I knew it would be the worst of all, because this folder was not about money or strategy or legal maneuvering. This folder was about my son. I took a breath and tapped the first email. The first email was dated March 2nd, 3 months ago. Subject line: Hey kid. Heard you are going through it. From Kyle Mercer to Lucas Beckett. Casual. Warm. The kind of message an older friend sends to a younger one who is struggling. Nothing suspicious on the surface. Lucas. Your mom mentioned you have been dealing with some stuff. College pressure. Life stuff. I have been there. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone outside the family noise, I am here. No judgment, no lectures, just a conversation. Kyle. I read it twice. The tone was careful, deliberate. Not the voice of a man who cared about my son. The voice of a man laying groundwork. Lucas did not reply for 8 days. March 10th. Thanks. Yeah, things are rough. Made some bad calls. Got in way over my head with something. Trying to deal with it on my own, but it is not going well. Lucas. Short. Guarded. The way Lucas always communicated when he was ashamed of something. I recognized the pattern. He had sounded exactly like that the night I found the pills in his room. Deflecting. Minimizing. Hoping the problem would disappear if he did not name it out loud. Kyle waited 3 days before responding. Long enough for Lucas to sit with the anxiety. Short enough to seem like he had been thinking carefully. March 13th. I hear you. We have all been in spots where it feels like there is no way out. The difference between people who drown and people who survive is knowing when to ask for help. If it is financial, I know people who can make problems disappear. Not asking you to explain. Just letting you know the door is open. K. Financial. He had zeroed in on it immediately. Lucas had not mentioned money, but Kyle already knew. He had done his research. He knew about the gambling. Knew about the debt. Probably knew the exact amount before he ever sent that first email. Lucas cracked on March 18th. A longer message this time. Desperate. It is bad. Really bad. Online sports betting. Started small last year. Just messing around during football season. Then I started chasing losses. You know how it goes. One more bet to break even. Then one more. Then another. I owe $75,000, Kyle. 75. The site sold my debt to a collection agency, and now these guys are calling me every day. Threatening. Saying they know where I go to school. I cannot sleep. I cannot focus. I cannot tell my dad because he would never look at me the same way. Lucas. $75,000. My son had been drowning for months, and I had not known. He had sat across from me at Thanksgiving dinner, passed the gravy, asked about the shop, and the entire time he had been carrying a weight that was crushing him, and he could not tell me. Because he thought I would be disappointed. Because he thought I would see him differently. He was wrong. I would have sold every car I had left. I would have taken a second mortgage on the house. I would have done whatever it took. But he did not know that. Because I had never told him. I had spent 22 years showing him how to fix engines and build things with his hands, but I had never once sat him down and said, "Lucas, no matter what you do, I am still your father, and I will never stop showing up for you." That was my failure. And Kyle had stepped into the gap. March 20th. Kyle's response. The pivot from friend to predator. 75 is serious, but not impossible. I have handled worse. I know people who specialize in making this kind of debt go away. Completely. Like it never existed. But it requires cooperation. Here is what I am thinking. Your mom is going through a difficult situation with your dad. Things are getting bad at home. She is scared. She needs support. And eventually she may need someone to speak honestly in a legal setting about what has been going on. You do not have to lie. Just tell the truth about what you have seen. How your dad has been pulling away. The anger. The mood swings. In exchange, I will cover $20,000 of your debt immediately. The rest gets handled after your mom's situation is resolved. Straight trade. You help your family. I help you. Everyone walks away clean. Think about it. K. A straight trade. That was how he framed it. Not blackmail. Not coercion. A transaction between reasonable people. Help your mom. Save yourself. Everyone wins. Lucas took 5 days to respond. I imagined those 5 days. The sleepless nights. The phone calls from collectors. The shame. Eating him alive. And then Kyle's offer sitting in his inbox like a life raft in open water. March 25th. Lucas. What exactly would I have to say? Lucas. March 25th. Kyle. Within 40 minutes. Nothing you do not already believe. Your dad has been distant, stressed, unpredictable. Mood swings. You have noticed it. Everyone has. Just be honest about that. Say it clearly in a deposition or in court if it comes to that. That is all. K. That is all. Like it was nothing. Like testifying against your own father was just paperwork. March 28th. Lucas. Okay. But I am only saying what I have actually seen. I am not making stuff up. Lucas. March 28th. Kyle. That is all I am asking. Sending the first payment now. 20,000. Check your account in the morning. K. The next document was a bank transfer confirmation. $20,000 wired to Lucas's checking account on March 29th. I stared at the number. My wife's lover had used my stolen money to buy my son's testimony. Then April. The tone changed. April 8th. Kyle sent 3 attachments. Photographs. I opened them. Mugshots. Criminal records. A news article from Tulsa World about a man beaten outside a bar in Broken Arrow by debt collectors. One man in the photos had a scar that ran from his ear to his chin. Another had 2 assault convictions and a weapons charge. Kyle's message was 3 sentences. These are the guys your debt was sold to. This is what they do to people who do not pay. That 20,000 I sent bought you time. Do not waste it. K. Lucas did not respond for 6 days. When he did, the fear was visible in every word. April 14th. Kyle. I have been thinking about this. I do not know about this. My dad is distant. Yeah. But dangerous? Unstable? I cannot say that. It feels wrong. He is still my dad. Lucas. Kyle replied in 27 minutes. Then let me be very clear, Lucas. You took $20,000. That money is already applied to your debt. You signed a receipt. If you back out now, 2 things happen. 1. Your creditors find out the payment plan collapsed. They send the men in those photos. 2. Your father finds out you took money to testify against him. How do you think that conversation goes? You are in this now. The only way out is forward. Do not let us down. K. Lucas tried one more time, May 4th. The email was short. Stripped of everything except exhaustion. I cannot do this, Kyle. I am sorry. I will figure out another way to pay you back. Please, just leave me alone. Lucas. Kyle's reply came in under an hour. No warmth left. No pretense. You signed a receipt for $20,000. You accepted payment for services agreed upon. If you walk away now, I make one phone call and every person in your life finds out what you did. Your mother, your school, your father. Imagine that conversation, Lucas. Imagine sitting across from Frank Beckett and explaining that you took $20,000 to testify against him. Imagine his face. Now imagine the men in those photographs standing outside your apartment because the payment plan fell through. You do not get to quit. You finish this. You testify. We close the chapter, and you walk away clean. Or you bail and I will bury you. This is the last time I explain your options. K. The cruelty was surgical. Kyle had not raised his voice. Had not made wild threats. He had simply laid out the architecture of Lucas's fear, with the calm precision of a man drawing blueprints, and left my son standing inside a building with no doors. June 1st. Lucas's final message. 6 words. I am in. But I hate this. Lucas. I stared at those words until the screen blurred. I am in. But I hate this. My son had not surrendered because he wanted to. He had surrendered because every exit had been sealed and the walls were closing in, and the only person offering a hand was the same person tightening the grip. I closed the email folder. 47 messages. 3 months of manipulation compressed into a digital paper trail that documented, step by step, how a grown man had identified a 22-year-old's weakness and systematically exploited it until compliance was the only option left. But I was not done. There was one more folder on the USB I had not opened. Unlabeled. Just a string of numbers. I tapped it. Inside were 11 files. Invoices. Delivery confirmations. Text message screenshots. And a spreadsheet titled Supplier Contacts and Distribution Log. I opened the spreadsheet first. 2 columns. Names on the left. Dates and amounts on the right. The entries went back 23 months, nearly 2 years. Lucas Beckett appeared on line 4. The first entry was dated 19 months ago. October of the previous year. LB, 30 tablets. Oxycodone, 10 milligram, $200. November. LB, 40 tablets, 300. December. LB, 60 tablets, 500. Increased dosage per request. Per request. As if Lucas had been a customer placing an order. As if this were a business transaction, and not the systematic destruction of a young man's life. The entries continued. January. February. March. Every month, the quantities increased. The prices climbed. By April of this year, Lucas was receiving 120 tablets per month at $800. The last entry was dated 3 weeks before I drove him to the rehab center. I scrolled to the top of the spreadsheet. The header read, KM. Distribution Regional Contacts. KM. Kyle Mercer. Kyle had not just blackmailed my son. He had created the addiction. He had been Lucas's supplier for nearly 2 years. Every pill Lucas swallowed. Every night, he could not sleep without something to take the edge off. Every morning, he woke up shaking and desperate. Kyle Mercer had put that in his hands. Deliberately, patiently. The way a farmer waters a crop he intends to harvest. And then, when Lucas was deep enough in the hole, when the addiction had cost him his football career and his savings and his dignity, Kyle had walked in with an offer of salvation. Pay off your debts. Help your mother. All you have to do is say a few words about your father. A straight trade. Lucas never had a chance. The trap had been set 2 years before he even knew it existed. I put the phone down on the concrete floor. The candle flame wavered in a draft from the vent pipe. Shadows moved across the walls like something alive. And for the first time since I left Iraq, I cried. Not the quiet kind. Not the kind you push down and swallow. The kind that comes from a place so deep you did not know it was there until it broke open. I pressed my fists against my eyes and sobbed in a concrete box underground, alone. And I did not try to stop it. I saw Lucas at 16, standing on the football field at Union High School under the Friday night lights. Number 32. Running back. Fourth quarter. The game tied. Coach called his number, and Lucas took the handoff, cut left, broke 2 tackles, and sprinted 43 yards into the end zone. The crowd erupted. I was on my feet screaming so loud my voice was gone by the time he reached the sideline. He ran straight to me. Not to his teammates, not to his mother, to me. Helmet off, face flushed, grinning so wide it looked like his face might split open. He grabbed me through the chain-link fence. "Did you see that, Dad? Did you see it?" "I saw it, son. I saw everything." He had been so alive that night, so full of something that the world had not yet taken from him. And somewhere between that Friday night and this concrete shelter, a man named Kyle Mercer had reached into my son's life and pulled that light out of him. Pill by pill, month by month, until there was nothing left but shame and dependency and a debt he could not pay. I wiped my face, took a breath, then another. The crying stopped, the way a storm stops. Suddenly and completely, leaving behind something cleaner. I picked up the phone, saved every file, every invoice, every text screenshot, every line of that spreadsheet. Then I closed the USB folder and stared at the dark screen. Kyle Mercer had built a career on destroying families. He had found my son, created his addiction, weaponized his shame, and bought his loyalty with my own stolen money. He had turned Nadine into a willing accomplice and Lucas into an unwilling one. He had planned to take my shop, my freedom, my sanity, and my son in a single operation. I stood up. My knees ached from the concrete. My eyes were swollen. My hands had finally stopped shaking. Not because the poison had worn off, but because something harder had taken its place. I was going to get my son back, and I was going to dismantle the man who did this to him. Piece by piece. The way you tear down an engine that was built to fail. I spent the rest of the night in the shelter. At some point after midnight, I found a second folder buried inside the USB directory that I had missed during my first pass. It was labeled LB, calls, archived, LB, Lucas Beckett. Inside were 19 audio files, MP4 format, recordings of phone calls, FaceTime calls, based on the audio quality. I understood immediately why they existed. Nadine had been recording her conversations with Lucas, not as mementos, as insurance. If Lucas ever changed his mind, if he ever tried to recant his testimony, she would have recordings of him agreeing to cooperate. Recordings that could be twisted, edited, taken out of context to make it look like his change of heart was fabricated rather than sincere. She had been protecting her flanks. Every angle covered. I put in an earbud and opened the first file. Dated 4 months ago. Nadine's voice filled my ear, warm and worried. Exactly the tone she used when she wanted something. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing? I have been thinking about you all week." A pause. "Lucas, I am okay. Tired. Just trying to keep up with classes." "Of course you are. You work so hard. I just worry about you. Being so far away. Dealing with everything alone." A soft exhale. "And I worry about things at home too, honestly." "What do you mean?" "Your father, Lucas. I do not want to upset you, but things have been harder lately. His moods. You know how he gets. He seemed okay when I called him last month. He seems okay. He is very good at that. But I am here every day. I see things you do not see." Her voice dropped, just slightly. A practiced drop. The kind that signals intimacy, that says this is just between us. The anger. Baby. The way he reacts to small things. Last week he came home, and I had moved some tools in the garage, and he completely lost it. I was scared, Lucas. I am not going to lie to you. I was scared. Silence from Lucas. Then, scared how? Just. The way he looked at me. I know he would never. I hope he would never. But I do not know anymore. That is what frightens me. I do not know anymore. I pulled the earbud out. Pressed my palm flat against the concrete floor. Breathed. Put the earbud back in. The tools in the garage. I remembered that evening. I had come home tired. Found my socket set moved to a different shelf. Asked Nadine if she had been in the garage. She had said no. I had dropped the subject in 30 seconds and gone inside to make dinner. There was no anger. No raised voice. Certainly no fear. She had taken a completely ordinary moment and recast it as a threat. And Lucas, 800 miles away, hearing only her voice, only her version, had no way to know the difference. I listened to 3 more recordings. They followed the same structure. Nadine would call. Ask about Lucas's week. Then steer the conversation toward home. Toward Frank. Each call adding another brushstroke to the portrait she was painting. A man losing control. A man his family could not trust. A man who needed to be handled. By the 4th recording, Lucas had stopped questioning. He had started agreeing. I know, Mom. I have noticed it too. He seems different when I call. Distracted. Short with me. That is what I mean, sweetheart. That is exactly what I mean. I am not making this up. I know you are not. She had been patient. Methodical. Month after month. Call after call. She had walked my son away from me, one careful step at a time. Not with dramatic accusations. With quiet, persistent doubt. The kind that does not feel like manipulation because it sounds like concern. Sounds like a mother protecting her child. I found the email that matched. March 15th. Kyle to Nadine. Keep the calls going. Do not push too hard. Let Lucas arrive at his own conclusions. The more he feels like he is making his own decision, the more convincing he will be on the stand. Push and it looks coached. Guide and it looks genuine. K. Guide and it looks genuine. 2 lines from a man who had done this before. In other cities. To other families. I thought about what Alma had told me. Kyle is not just a private investigator. He has connections. He has people. She had been more right than she knew. Kyle Mercer was not a criminal of opportunity. He was a professional. A surgeon who specialized in one operation. Find a family. Find the fault lines. Apply pressure until the whole structure came apart. He had found our fault lines without much difficulty. Lucas's shame over the debt. Nadine's dissatisfaction with a marriage she had stopped believing in. My habit of showing love through work instead of words. My blind trust. He had looked at everything we had built and seen exactly where to push. I opened one final email. April 29th. Nadine to Kyle. I am worried about Lucas. What if he finds out about the drugs in the shop? What if someone tells him what we are really doing? He will not cooperate. If he knows Frank could go to prison. N. Kyle's reply. Lucas does not know, and he is not going to know. He thinks this is a complicated divorce. A bad one, but just a divorce. The less he understands, the more useful he is. Ignorance is not a weakness in this situation. It is the whole strategy. K. The less he understands, the more useful he is. Lucas had not betrayed me. Lucas had been used. There was a profound difference between those two things, and in the silence of that underground room, the difference mattered enormously. My son was not my enemy. He was the other casualty. I set the phone down and sat with that for a long time. Before dawn, I made 2 decisions. The first was that I needed to contact Lucas. Not yet. Not while I was still underground and short on evidence. But soon, before the confrontation, before any of this went public, he deserved to hear the truth from me before he heard it from a courtroom. The second decision was simpler. I needed people. Real people. Trusted people. People who knew me and could move through the world without raising suspicion, while I could not. I had 3 names in mind. I watched the vent pipe in the ceiling slowly brighten as morning light filtered down from somewhere above. The shelter was warming slightly. Outside, Tulsa was waking up. Traffic building on the highways. Shift workers heading to plants and warehouses. Ordinary people living ordinary Tuesday mornings. I had a blood test to get to. A retired judge to call. And a mechanic who had worked beside me for 20 years and never once asked for more explanation than a man's word. It was time to stop hiding in the dark and start building a way back into the light. Daniela Gutierrez opened the door before I knocked. She had her mother's eyes. Dark, sharp, the kind that take in a room in a single pass and miss nothing. She was 23 years old, small-framed, wearing scrubs from a night shift she had come off 2 hours earlier. Behind her, a studio apartment in a quiet complex south of downtown Oklahoma City. Clean, organized. A nursing textbook open on the kitchen table. She looked at me for a moment. Then she stepped aside. "Come in, Mr. Beckett. We need to work fast." She had everything ready. Cotton swabs. A small blood draw kit. Evidence bags with chain of custody labels she had borrowed from a colleague at the hospital. She moved with the efficient calm of someone accustomed to doing important things under pressure. "Hair first," she said. 20 strands from the root. Then a blood draw. 2 vials. She paused. "My mother told me everything. I want you to know, this matters to me personally." "I know it does." "Thank you, Daniela." She shook her head once. "Thank me when we have results." The blood draw took 4 minutes. She labeled everything precisely, sealed the bags, and handed me a receipt documenting the collection date, time, and her credentials. A paper trail that would hold up. "Rush processing," she said. "My contact at the private lab owes me a favor. 48 hours. Maybe less. I will call you on the number my mother gave me the moment I have anything." I drove back north toward Tulsa on the empty morning highway. The sun was climbing behind me, throwing long shadows ahead of the truck. My arm ached slightly where the needle had gone in. A small, clean pain. Honest compared to everything else. I had 2 more calls to make. Eddie Voss answered on the second ring. The way he always did when he was already awake and working. Eddie had been my head mechanic for 20 years. 60 years old. Retired military like me. Army infantry. 2 years before my deployment. He was the kind of man who communicated in complete sentences only when absolutely necessary and complete silence the rest of the time. He had shown up to work the morning after his wife's funeral and never once asked me to make accommodations. Frank. His voice was flat. Careful. He already knew something was wrong. Eddie always knew. "I need your help. All of it. No questions, until I explain." Okay, that was it. 1 word. No hesitation. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, 3 minutes of silence passed. "What do you need from me?" "Keep the shop running. Act normal. And tonight, after dark, meet me 4 blocks from the house. I need to get inside and install cameras." "What time?" 11:30. "I will be there." The call lasted 7 minutes. I had known Eddie Voss for 2 decades. In 20 years, he had never lied to me, never cut corners on a job, and never once made a problem worse by talking about it. He was exactly the right person for exactly this moment. Judge Raymond Dawson took longer to convince. He was 67 years old, retired from the Tulsa County District Court after 31 years on the bench. He drove a 10-year-old Buick and brought it to my shop twice a year for service. We had shared exactly 3 conversations longer than 5 minutes in all that time. But something about the way I spoke that morning, the flatness of my voice, The specificity of what I knew made him listen past the part where most people would have told me to contact the authorities. Kyle Mercer, he repeated. Private investigator. Former law enforcement. That is what Nadine told me. Former. Why former, did she ever say? No. A pause. Give me until this afternoon. I have a friend at the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation who owes me 2 favors. If Mercer has a history, she will find it. Dawson called back at 3:15 while I was sitting in a parking garage, eating a gas station sandwich that tasted like cardboard and regret. Kyle Allen Mercer, 44 years old, former Tulsa PD, resigned under investigation in 2017 for misconduct. Charges involved falsifying evidence in a domestic dispute case. Charges were dropped when the complainant withdrew. He never lost his PI license because the criminal charge did not stick. Dawson paused. Here is the part that matters, Frank. My OSBI contact found something else. Mercer has been flagged twice in the past 3 years for impersonating a law enforcement officer, accessing court records and sealed case files using a badge from his former department, a badge he was required to surrender upon resignation, a fake badge. Kyle had been walking into courthouses and records offices with credentials that should have been in a property room 7 years ago, accessing sealed files, building cases, targeting families. Can your contact document this? I asked. She already has. I will have a sworn affidavit by tomorrow morning. I exhaled slowly. Ray, thank you. Do not thank me yet. Just do not get yourself killed before this is over. That night, Eddie met me 4 blocks from the house at 11:20. He was leaning against his truck eating a granola bar when I pulled up. He handed me a second one without comment. We ate in silence for 30 seconds. Cameras? He said. 4. Living room, kitchen, office, bedroom. He pulled a paper bag from the back seat. Inside, 4 miniature wireless cameras still in their packaging. Motion activated. Cloud storage. Battery powered. Already bought them, he said. Figured you would not want your name on a receipt. I looked at him. How did you know what to buy? You installed the same model in the shop 3 years ago. I paid attention. He shrugged. You going to stand here, or are we going? Nadine's bedroom light went dark at 11:40. No other cars in the driveway. I punched in the garage code, still set to my father's birthday, a detail Nadine had never bothered to change, and we slipped inside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something floral I did not recognize. A candle she had been burning. Foreign. Like walking into a space that had been someone else's for longer than I had realized. 18 minutes. Eddie moved like he had done this before. Quick and methodical, no wasted motion. Living room camera behind the decorative clock on the mantel. Kitchen camera inside the range hood vent, angled toward the counter where she made the tea. Office camera inside the base of the desk lamp. Bedroom camera behind a stack of books on the upper shelf. We were out by 12:14. Door locked. Code reset. Back at my shelter, I opened the app. 4 new feeds blinked green. Added to the 3 shop cameras still running. 7 total. Every angle covered. Every room that mattered. Eddie's voice came through my phone. All green on my end. Audio is clean. Thank you, Eddie. A pause. You would have done the same. He was right. I would have. I set the phone down and looked at the 7 green lights glowing on my screen. The trap was set. Now I needed them to walk into it. The first useful footage came through at 7:42 the following morning. I was sitting in the shelter with cold coffee and my phone propped against the wall, watching all 7 feeds simultaneously. The shop cameras showed Eddie opening up for the day, the familiar routine of unlocking the bay doors and switching on the compressor. The house cameras showed nothing. An empty kitchen, an unmade bed, a home office with the desk lamp burning. Then Nadine walked into the kitchen. She was already dressed. Dark blazer, hair pulled back, the composed professional appearance she wore like armor. But something was different. She moved through the kitchen quickly, without her usual deliberate calm, and when she picked up her phone, her hands were not steady. She dialed. Put it on speaker while she poured coffee. Kyle answered on the second ring. "We have a problem." Her voice was flat and tight. "Whitfield called this morning. The ATF has not moved. They were supposed to act on the anonymous tip 3 days ago." "What happened?" Kyle's voice came through the kitchen speaker clearly. The camera microphone was better than I had expected. "It is being handled. These things take time." "We do not have time, Kyle. Frank has been gone for 3 days. He is not answering his phone. What if he found the cameras? What if he saw the footage? He does not know anything. He is probably lying low because he knows the divorce is coming and he cannot face it." "You do not know that, Nadine." His voice sharpened. "Stick to the plan. Do not call the lawyer. Do not move the accounts yet. Wait for the tip to process and let it run." She hung up without responding. Stood at the counter, coffee untouched, staring at nothing. I saved the clip and kept watching. At 2 in the afternoon, Daniela called on the burner number. "Results are in." Her voice was careful and precise. "Hair sample confirms chronic benzodiazepine exposure over an extended period, consistent with approximately 6 to 8 months of regular low-dose administration. Blood confirms active metabolites still present at measurable levels." A pause. "Mr. Beckett, I had my contact run a secondary confirmation. The specific compound is clonazepam, prescription medication. In the concentrations found in your samples, administered regularly without a prescription to someone without a diagnosed condition requiring it, this constitutes criminal poisoning under Oklahoma statute." Criminal poisoning. The words landed simply, without drama, because by this point I had already known, had already processed the shock, and what was left was not surprise but the cold satisfaction of having evidence that matched what I knew to be true. "Can you certify the results?" "Already done. Signed, notarized, chain of custody intact from collection to analysis. My contact is a licensed forensic toxicologist. These results will hold up in any court in this state." Another pause. "I am sorry, Mr. Beckett, for what this means." "Do not be sorry. You gave me exactly what I needed." The most important footage came that evening. 8:47. Kyle arrived through the side entrance of the house, the one that opened into the laundry room. He was carrying a laptop bag and moving with purpose. Nadine met him in the kitchen. The camera caught everything. Clear audio. Sharp image. "I am nervous," she said immediately. "Stop." He set the bag on the counter. "Being nervous makes you sloppy. We are close. Stay focused." "Close?" "Frank has disappeared." "What if he went to the police?" "With what?" Kyle's voice was patient, almost bored. "A hunch? He has no evidence. Everything points at him. The only person he could have talked to is Alma, and Alma is a 60-year-old housekeeper who has been cleaning bathrooms for 30 years. Nobody is going to take her word over a documented criminal investigation." He opened the laptop and pulled up a file. The office camera caught the screen at an angle. "Bank records. My bank records. Here is what we do," Kyle said. "I make one more call to my ATF contact tonight. Push the timeline. The raid happens by the end of the week. Once Frank is in custody, Whitfield files for emergency asset freeze. 60 days later, you have the shop, the house, and enough liquidity to start over anywhere you want." Nadine was quiet for a moment. "And you have done this before." Not a question. A statement. Kyle looked at her. "What?" "I am not stupid, Kyle. The badge. The ATF contact. The psychiatric evaluation you had ready in 2 weeks. Nobody builds this kind of infrastructure for one situation." She crossed her arms. "How many times?" A pause. Kyle smiled slightly. The smile of a man who had stopped pretending. 3 times. Different cities, different circumstances, but the same basic architecture. He shrugged. It works, Nadine. That is what matters. 3 families. 3 situations that needed resolving. He closed the laptop. Yours is the cleanest I have ever run. Frank is a good man, which actually makes it easier. Good men trust. Good men do not look too closely. And when good men finally realize what is happening, they hesitate. They want to believe it is not real. He met her eyes. By the time Frank stops hesitating, this will already be over. What happened next I had not anticipated. Nadine turned away from him, walked to the kitchen window, stood there with her back to the room, looking out at the backyard I had built the porch onto 18 years ago. I did not want this, she said quietly. Kyle was silent. I wanted out of the marriage. I wanted a different life. But I did not want to destroy him. She turned back. Her face was composed, but her eyes were not. You told me it would be clean. You told me he would end up in a halfway house somewhere. Not prison. He will be fine. 3 families, Kyle. Her voice dropped. How many of them were fine? Kyle walked to her, put his hands on her shoulders. His voice was gentle in the way that is not gentle at all. Nadine, remember what I have in my files. The medication you took from the hospital, the amounts, the dates, the patients. He let that land. We finished this together. That was always the arrangement. She closed her eyes, said nothing. He kissed her forehead and stepped back, like a man who had just reminded an employee of a contract clause. I stopped the recording, sat in the shelter, the 7 green lights glowing on my screen. He had been blackmailing her too. The affair, the plan, the poisoning, none of it had been entirely Nadine's choice. Kyle had found her weakness the same way he had found Lucas's. Different leverage. Same method. He had walked into her life, identified the secret she was most afraid of losing, and built a trap around it so carefully she had not realized she was inside it until the door was closed. My wife had betrayed me. That was real, and I was not going to minimize it. But she had also been turned into a weapon by a man who specialized in turning people into weapons, and somewhere inside that distinction was something I would need to think about for a long time. I sent the clip to Eddie with 3 words. Post it tonight. An hour later, Alma's Facebook post went up in a local community group. No real names. Enough detail. The footage clips followed 30 minutes after that, uploaded to a blog Eddie had set up that afternoon. By midnight, the blog had 4,000 views. By morning, it would have 10 times that. I had been thinking about the right moment to call Lucas for 3 days. Every time I picked up the phone, something stopped me. The wrong location, the wrong state of mind, too much emotion, and not enough evidence. Or enough evidence, but not enough control over my own voice to say what needed to be said without breaking something that might not be fixable. The morning after the blog went live, I finally understood that waiting for the perfect moment was its own kind of cowardice. I dialed. It rang 4 times. Then 5. I was preparing myself for voicemail when he answered. Dad. His voice was quiet, careful. The voice of someone who had been sitting near the phone for days, hoping it would ring and dreading it at the same time. Lucas. I stopped. Started again. I am not calling to argue. I am not calling to ask you to explain anything. I just need you to listen. Can you do that? A long pause. Yeah, I know about the debt. I know about Kyle. I know about the $20,000. I know everything, Lucas. I kept my voice even. And I need you to know that none of that is why I am calling. I am calling because you are my son, and I think you are in danger. And I need to see you. Silence so complete I thought he had hung up. Then, very quietly. How long have you known? Long enough. Can we meet? Another pause. I was going to call you. I have been trying to call you for 2 days. I saw something online. A blog. And I. His voice cracked. Dad, I think I made a terrible mistake. I know. I did not know what they were really doing. I swear I did not know about the… Lucas. Stop. My throat was tight. We are not doing this on the phone. Tell me where you are. He was at a motel off the turnpike near the airport. Had driven down from Stillwater the previous morning after seeing the blog. Had been sitting in a $12 a night room for 24 hours trying to decide whether calling me was the bravest thing he could do or the worst. I told him to meet me at a diner I knew on Old Route 66. A place called the Sunrise Grill that had been there since before I was born and served coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Booths in the back, away from the windows. Nobody who knew either of us would be there on a Thursday morning. He was already in the last booth when I walked in. Hood up despite the heat. Head down. A cup of coffee in front of him that he had not touched. When he heard the bell above the door, he looked up. We stared at each other across the length of the diner. He looked the way he had looked the morning I dropped him at the rehab center. Thin, pale, hollowed out. But there was something different now. The shame was still there, but it was fighting for space with something else. Something that looked like it might eventually become courage, if given enough room. I walked to the booth and sat down across from him. He opened his mouth. I raised one hand. Hug first. Talk second. He came around the table and I stood up and put my arms around my son for the first time in 4 months. He was shaking. Not the tremor of withdrawal. I had learned to recognize that. And this was different. This was a 22-year-old boy who had been carrying something much too heavy for much too long and had finally set it down. He cried into my shoulder. Not quietly. The kind of crying that has been held in for so long it comes out wrong, ragged, and gasping. I held him tighter and did not say anything because there was nothing to say that mattered more than just staying there, and that was the one thing I knew how to do. When he sat back down, he wiped his face with the back of his hand and stared at the table. I am so sorry, Dad. I know you are. I did not know what to do. The debt was so bad, and I was so ashamed. And when Kyle showed up and offered to help, I thought… He stopped. I was not thinking. I was just drowning, and someone threw me a rope. I know exactly what that feels like. He looked up. Something shifted in his face at that. I leaned forward. Lucas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. What exactly did Kyle tell you this was about? The divorce. He said you and Mom were separating, and it was going to get ugly, and she needed someone who could speak to your behavior. Your moods. He said I just had to tell the truth about what I had seen. Did he ever mention drugs? Lucas frowned. What kind of drugs? Did he ever mention anything being planted at the shop? Weapons? Cash? No. His frown deepened. What are you talking about? What did they plant? I held up my phone. I want to show you something. The first thing is going to be hard to see. I need you to watch all of it before you say anything. I played the shop footage from the morning I drove him to the rehab center. Kyle arriving. The duffel bag. The weapons and cash and drugs placed behind my workbench. Kyle photographing my license plate. The audio. Once the feds find this, he is finished. Lucas watched without moving. His face went through several things I did not have names for. When it ended, he set the phone down on the table. Very slowly, like something fragile. That is not just a divorce, he said. No, he was going to have you arrested. Federal charges. Weapons, narcotics, cash. Minimum 5 years. More likely, 10. Lucas pressed both hands flat on the table. Stared at them. I could see him processing. The ground shifting beneath everything he had believed for the past 4 months. There is more, I said. The next thing I am going to show you is about your mother. I need you to be ready for it. He looked up. His jaw was set now. The hollowness had been replaced by something harder. Show me. I pulled up the kitchen camera footage from 3 nights ago. Nadine standing at the counter. The unmarked bottle. The careful drops into the glass that she set in my usual spot every night for 7 months. The color drained from Lucas's face so completely he looked like a photograph. "What is that?" he whispered. "Benzodiazepine. Clonazepam. Prescribed medication she was not prescribed to give anyone. In my tea. Every night. For 7 months." I paused. "I have lab results. Certified by a forensic toxicologist. It is documented and verified." Lucas stared at the frozen image on the screen. His mother's hands. The bottle. The glass. "She poisoned you." Not a question. Flat. Disbelieving and believing at the exact same moment. Yes, he was quiet for a long time. The diner hummed around us. Silverware clinked somewhere near the front. Outside, a truck downshifted on the highway. Finally, Lucas looked at me. His eyes were dry now. Completely dry. "What do you need me to do?" I ordered coffee for both of us. The waitress, a heavy-set woman in her 50s with reading glasses pushed up into her hair, refilled the pot without being asked and left us alone. The diner was quiet. A farmer type at the counter eating eggs. 2 women near the window talking over menus. Nobody paying attention to a man and his son in the back booth. Lucas wrapped both hands around his mug and looked at me. The decision was already made. I could see it in the set of his jaw. He just needed to know what he was deciding to do. "There is one more thing," I said. "The worst one." He did not flinch. "Tell me. The pills." "Lucas. Your opioids. The ones you have been taking for the past 2 years. His expression changed slightly. Confusion edging in around the determination. "Kyle Mercer was your supplier." The mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "Not the whole chain," I said. "But he was the origin point. He was the one who introduced the pills into your life. I have the distribution records. His name on a spreadsheet. Your name on line 4. First entry. 19 months ago. Every month after that, the quantities went up. He watched the dosage increase. He knew exactly what he was doing." Lucas set the mug down. "Very carefully. The way you set something down when your hands are not fully under your control. He gave me those pills," he said. Not a question. Barely a statement. More like a man hearing a sentence in a foreign language and translating it 1 word at a time. "Yes, he made me an addict." Slower this time. Each word arriving separately. "Yes." Lucas turned his face toward the window. I watched him absorb it. Watched the understanding move through him the way weather moves across flat Oklahoma ground, visible from miles away, and unstoppable once it arrives. The gambling debt he had racked up, the shame that had made him easy to manipulate, the dependency that had cost him his football career and his sense of himself. Kyle had engineered all of it, not with a single dramatic action but with patience. With consistent supply, with the knowledge that a young man given enough of the right substance over enough time would eventually need it more than he needed anything else. When Lucas turned back, his eyes were dry. Something in them had gone very still. "He built the trap and then sold me the key," he said quietly. "Yes. And then offered to save me from the trap he built." "Yes." He looked at his hands on the table. The hands of someone who had been working toward getting clean for weeks, white-knuckling through nights in a facility that smelled like industrial cleaner and old carpet, doing the hardest thing he had ever done. All of it necessary because of a man who had decided 2 years ago that Lucas Beckett was a useful asset, and the most efficient way to make him useful was to make him desperate. I gave him time. The farmer at the counter paid his bill and left. The 2 women near the window were still talking. The waitress refilled someone's water. Then Lucas said something that hit me harder than anything else he had said that morning. "Dad, do you remember when I was little, maybe 10 or 11? My bike. I jumped a ramp in the Hendersons' driveway and completely wiped out. Bent the front wheel so bad it looked like a taco. I remembered. I smiled before I could stop myself. You were convinced it was totaled. I was crying, telling you we had to throw it out, and you just picked it up, looked at it for about 2 seconds and said, "Nobody throws away something that can be fixed." Then you spent 2 hours in the garage teaching me how to true a wheel. He looked at me. I thought about that every day in rehab. Every day it was hard, which was every day. I kept thinking, nobody throws away something that can be fixed. My throat closed completely. "I am not totaled, Dad," he said. "I know it looks like it, but I am not." "I know you are not," I managed. "I never thought you were." We sat with that for a moment. Then I laid out the plan. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. The shop. I would be there. Eddie would be there. Lucas would be there. 7 cameras running. Live stream active. Whatever walked through that door would be captured in real time, in front of however many people chose to watch. But for it to work, Nadine and Kyle both needed to show up. And they needed to believe they were walking into a conversation they controlled. "I need you to do one thing before tomorrow," I said. "Text your mother. Tell her you are coming home. That you want to see her. That you have been thinking about everything, and you want to talk. Make her feel safe." Lucas pulled out his phone. His thumbs moved across the screen without hesitation. He turned it so I could read the message before he sent it. "Mom, I am coming home tomorrow night. I need to talk to you in person. About everything. About Dad. About what happens next. 8 o'clock. I just need to see you." I nodded. He sent it. Her reply came in 43 seconds. "Oh, sweetheart. Yes. Please come. I have been so worried about you. I love you so much. I will be here. We will figure this out together." Lucas read the message. Set the phone down face up on the table between us. Looked at it for a long time. "She thinks I am still on her side," he said. "Yes. And Kyle will come because he will want to manage the situation." "That is exactly right." Lucas nodded slowly. Then he looked up at me. And for the first time since the rehab center parking lot, he looked like himself. Not the boy I remembered from 15 years ago. That was gone, and it was supposed to be gone. People were supposed to grow out of who they were. But the person underneath, the one who had been buried under shame and dependency and someone else's careful engineering, the one who had sat in a rehab bed every hard night, thinking about a bent bicycle wheel, and a father who said nobody throws away something that can be fixed. "I am going to testify," he said. "Everything Kyle did to me. Every email. Every payment. Every threat. Every pill. I do not care what it costs me. I am done letting him use my silence. You understand the legal exposure. I do not care." "Lucas. Dad." He leaned forward. "I took money to betray my father. I am not walking away from that. I am going to stand in that shop tomorrow night and tell the truth. And whatever happens after that, I will handle it. That is the only way I know how to start fixing this." I reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. He put his hand over mine. We stayed like that for a moment. Two people, who had nearly lost each other to a carefully constructed lie, sitting in a diner on Route 66 on a Thursday morning, with the sun coming through the window and the coffee going cold. Then I picked up my burner phone and sent a text to Nadine's number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. The shop. Come alone if you want, but come." Her reply took 6 minutes. "Fine. But Kyle is coming with me." I read it. Set the phone down. And for the first time in 9 days, I smiled. "Good," I said. Lucas looked at me. "Good? I want them both there." He understood. He sat back and something settled in his face. Not relief, not yet. But the particular steadiness of a person who has stopped running and turned around. Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. Everything ended. 8 o'clock. I stood in the center of Beckett's auto repair for the first time in 9 days and let the smell of the place settle over me. Motor oil, brake fluid, old metal and concrete dust. The particular smell of 3 generations of work. My grandfather had breathed this air for 40 years. My father for 30. I had spent the last 25 contributing my own share of grease and sweat to the walls. On the shelf above the main workbench, the photograph of Harold Beckett looked down at me. 1963. My grandfather in coveralls, wrench in hand, standing in front of the original single-bay building that had since grown into 6. He was grinning. A man who had built something from nothing, and knew it. I had built something too. And tonight, I was going to defend it. Eddie stood near the side entrance, arms crossed, toolbox at his feet. Not because we needed the tools, because Eddie Voss always had a toolbox within reach, the same way some men always had a rosary. It was just how he moved through the world. All 7 feeds are green, he said without preamble. Audio clean on every channel. Cloud upload is running. Stream goes live. The second you give the word. How many waiting? He checked his phone. 2,300 in the chat room. More joining every minute. The blog has been up 36 hours. People have been refreshing since this morning. I looked at the laptop open on the workbench. The live stream interface filled the screen. Chat window already moving. Names and comments scrolling. People from 3 states, from what Eddie had told me. A veterans community page had shared the blog that morning. The comments there had been something to read. 7 of them were here in person. Guys I had fixed vehicles for over the years. Men who had served in various branches at various times and who had apparently read the blog and driven to a mechanic shop on a Thursday evening because they felt like it. They stood near the back of the garage in a loose cluster, not saying much, not needing to. Their presence was the statement. Lucas was in the back office, door pulled mostly closed. Waiting. I checked my watch. 8:02. Headlights swept through the bay windows. A car door. Then 2 more. Nadine came through the main entrance first. Business suit, dark gray, the kind she wore to important meetings. Hair, precise. Composure assembled with the same deliberate care she applied to everything. She stopped when she saw the garage lit up. The laptop on the workbench. The men standing at the back. Her eyes found me. Trent. She had used that name for 25 years. It landed differently now. Nadine. I kept my voice level. Thanks for coming. Kyle came in behind her. Jacket and dark jeans. Moving with the relaxed confidence of a man who expected to leave this situation the same way he had entered every other one. In control. He scanned the room in 3 seconds, the professional assessment of someone trained to read environments. His gaze settled on the laptop, on the camera mounted near the ceiling, on the cluster of veterans at the back. Something shifted in his expression. Barely visible. But there, behind him, Michael Whitfield. 60-something, gray suit, briefcase, Nadine's lawyer. He looked uncomfortable from the moment he crossed the threshold, his eyes moving around the garage with the expression of a man who had walked into something he had not been adequately briefed on. Mr. Beckett. He stepped forward, clearing his throat. I am Michael Whitfield, Mrs. Beckett's legal counsel. Before anything is said here tonight, I want to establish that my client is present under protest, and that any statements made in this setting, $8,500, I said. He stopped. That is what Nadine paid you. Pulled from our joint savings account in April. The account that requires both signatures for withdrawals over $5,000. I have the bank statement. I have a copy of your retainer agreement. And I have the account number on the payment, which matches our joint savings, not any personal account. I looked at him steadily. You might want to hear what I have to say before you finish that sentence. Whitfield closed his mouth. His briefcase lowered slightly. His eyes moved to Nadine. She said nothing. I walked to the laptop, turned it to face the room. My name is Frank Beckett. I have been in hiding for 9 days. During that time, I gathered evidence of a conspiracy to frame me on federal weapons and narcotics charges, steal my assets, and have me committed to a psychiatric facility. I looked at the camera, not at Nadine, not at Kyle, at the camera. 2,300 people are watching this right now. Everything that happens in this room is being recorded and broadcast live. There is no version of tonight where this does not become part of the permanent record. Kyle took one step forward. Turn it off, Frank. No. He looked at Eddie. Eddie looked back at him with the particular expression of a man who has spent 60 years not being moved by things. Kyle stayed where he was. I pulled up the first video file. This is footage from the security cameras I installed in this shop 3 years ago. 7:41 in the morning, 9 days ago. The morning I drove my son to a rehabilitation facility. I hit play. The screen showed the shop interior. The side door opening. Kyle entering with the black duffel bag. The careful arrangement of weapons, cash, and marked narcotics behind the workbench. The photographs of my truck. The audio. Once the feds find this, he is finished. The live stream chat exploded. Comments scrolling too fast to read. Nadine stared at the screen without moving. Kyle's jaw tightened. That footage is fabricated. Any competent technician can generate realistic video using widely available software. My attorney will demonstrate. Your attorney is not here tonight, I said. Michael is. Whitfield had taken 2 quiet steps backward toward the entrance. I pulled up the second file. Kitchen camera. Nadine at the counter. The unmarked bottle. The careful drops into the glass. The small, satisfied nod before she carried it to my usual spot. The chat went silent for 3 full seconds. Then erupted. Whitfield stopped moving toward the door. He stood completely still, briefcase in both hands, watching the screen with the expression of a man recalculating everything very quickly. Deep fake, Nadine said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. I pulled up the third file. The kitchen camera from 2 nights ago. Kyle's voice through the speaker, clear as a phone call in a quiet room. 3 times. Different cities. Different circumstances. But the same basic architecture. Kyle's composure cracked. It was small. A tightening around the eyes. A shift in weight from one foot to the other. But I had been watching him for 9 days through camera feeds, and I knew exactly what his controlled face looked like. This was not it. Turn it off, he said again. Quieter this time. The confidence still in his voice, but the foundation of it had moved. No. He stepped toward the laptop. Eddie moved from the wall in one smooth step, placing himself between Kyle and the workbench. Not aggressive, not threatening. Simply present. Immovable. Kyle stopped. The live stream viewer count read 4,100. I looked toward the back office. The door had opened, while Kyle was watching the screen. Lucas, I said. Come out here. The back office door swung open. Lucas stepped through it wearing my old army jacket. Desert tan, faded at the shoulders, the name tape above the breast pocket, reading Beckett in black letters. I had not told him to wear it. He had found it on the hook behind the office door, where I had left it years ago. He walked to the center of the garage and stood beside me. Nadine's composure did not survive it. Something broke in her face. Not guilt. Not yet. Something more complicated. The expression of a person watching 2 things collapse into each other. The story she had told herself and the reality it had been built on top of. Lucas. His name barely made it out of her mouth. He looked at her for a moment. Then he turned to Kyle. The viewer count read 4,800. I want to say something on camera, Lucas said. His voice was steady. Not rehearsed, steady. The kind of steady that comes when a person finally runs out of reasons to be afraid. Because I am done letting silence protect people who do not deserve it. Kyle said nothing. His eyes were still calculating. Looking for the angle. The exit. The lever. There was no lever. Lucas had read every email, You came to me 10 months ago, Lucas said. You told me you wanted to help. You paid part of my debt. You made me feel like someone had thrown me a rope. He paused. I found your distribution log, Kyle. My name on line 4. First entry. 19 months ago. Silence. You gave me those pills. You created the addiction and then used it to own me. You made me an addict so you could turn me into a weapon against my own father. Kyle opened his mouth. Do not, Eddie said from the wall. One word. The tone of a man who had spent 60 years not being moved by anything. Final. Kyle closed his mouth. Nadine had not moved. She stood in the center of the garage looking at her son in his father's jacket. And whatever she had been holding herself together with for the past 9 days was gone. What was left underneath was not what I had expected. Not defiance. Something rawer. A woman watching the story she had told herself come apart in real time. Nadine. I said her name without anger. Just her name. The way you say the name of someone you have known a long time when you need them to stop performing. It is over. Whatever he told you it would look like on the other side, it does not look like that. She turned to face me. Her hands were shaking. I did not want this. Her voice broke. I wanted out of the marriage. I wanted a different life. But I did not want to hurt you. He said it would be clean. He said you would end up somewhere manageable. And nobody would really be hurt. He lied to you, I said. The same way he lied to Lucas. The same way he has done to 3 other families in 3 other cities. Kyle moved toward the door. One of the veterans was already there. He stood in the doorway, with his hands in his pockets, and looked at Kyle with the expression of a man who had done 2 tours overseas and was not remotely impressed by a private investigator in an expensive jacket. Kyle stopped. Nadine pressed both hands over her mouth. When she spoke again, the words came between breaths that could not quite hold them. He found out about the medications. From the hospital. I took things I should not have taken. 5 years ago. When things were very bad. He said he had documentation. He said if I did not cooperate, he would send it to the hospital board and I would lose my nursing license. She looked at me. I was scared, Frank. I know that is not enough. I know it does not fix anything, but I was so scared. She had poisoned me. She had helped build the machine designed to put me in prison. All of that was real. But she had also been found and manipulated and cornered by the same man who had done it to everyone else in this story. I filed that away for a longer timeline than tonight. I looked at the camera. At the 5,000 people watching. My name is Frank Beckett. 9 days ago, I was in a parking lot with a security app on my phone and a life I was about to lose. Tonight, the people who tried to take it are standing in my grandfather's garage. And now the whole world knows the truth. Lucas stepped closer. I put my arm around his shoulders. Tires on gravel outside. Police radio through an open car window. Blue and red light swept through the bay windows, painting the walls in rotating color. Whitfield picked up his briefcase. I am withdrawing as counsel, he said quietly. To no one in particular, and walked out the door. 2 officers came through the main entrance. Then 2 more. Kyle looked at them with the flat assessment of a professional acknowledging that a job had not gone as planned. As they moved toward him, he looked at me one final time. No anger, no fear. Just the neutral expression of a man who had run the calculation and arrived at the wrong answer. I held his gaze until they turned him around. Nadine was already sitting against the wall, head in her hands. An officer crouched beside her and said something I could not hear. She nodded and let herself be helped to her feet. She did not look at Lucas as they walked her out. Maybe because she could not. Lucas watched his mother go. His face held everything still and careful, the way you carry something that might break if you move too fast. I kept my arm around his shoulders. Felt him lean into it. It is over, son, I said quietly. It is over. He nodded once against my shoulder. The blue and red lights kept turning outside. The viewer count read 5,200. And the garage my grandfather had built 60 years ago, with his own hands, was still standing. 2 weeks later, I sat in a small interview room at the Tulsa Police Department and gave my full statement for the third time. Detective Sharon Reyes sat across from me with a legal pad and a digital recorder, and the particular patience of someone who has heard a lot of difficult stories and learned not to rush them. She reviewed everything: the camera footage, the USB files, Daniela's toxicology report documenting 6 to 8 months of criminal poisoning, Judge Dawson's affidavit about the counterfeit badge, the distribution log connecting Kyle to 19 months of opioid supply to my son, the financial records showing $82,500 transferred from our joint accounts without my authorization, and the live stream recording, which by the morning after the confrontation had been viewed by 400,000 people and shared by news outlets in 11 states. Kyle Allen Mercer, she said, reviewing her notes. Federal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence fabrication, narcotics distribution, impersonating a law enforcement officer, extortion, witness tampering. She looked up. The district attorney's office has also been in contact with investigators in 2 other cities, Dallas and Kansas City. Similar patterns, similar victims. They are building a federal case that will likely add charges. Good, I said. He will not be out for a very long time, Mr. Beckett. Nadine's charges were different: conspiracy, criminal poisoning, financial fraud. But her attorney negotiated on the basis of coercion and cooperation. She had provided a full written statement detailing everything Kyle had directed her to do and everything he had held over her to ensure compliance. The hospital medication theft from 5 years ago was a real secret. Kyle had real documentation. She had been genuinely trapped, though that did not erase the choices she made inside the trap. The court sentenced Kyle to 12 years in federal prison. Nadine received 4 years, with credit for cooperation, and the judge noted on the record that the evidence of sustained coercion had been given meaningful weight. Lucas stood before a different judge in a smaller courtroom and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, the reduced charge his cooperation had earned. The judge read through the file carefully. Then he looked at my son. "You made serious choices," he said. "But the record is clear that you were targeted, manipulated, and coerced by a professional who identified your vulnerability and exploited it methodically. You came forward. You cooperated fully. You told the truth at considerable personal cost." He paused. 2 years probation. 200 hours community service. Mandatory counseling for gambling addiction. Restitution of $55,000 to be repaid over 5 years in monthly installments. Lucas stood straight the entire time. When it was over, he turned to me and said nothing. He did not need to. 2 months after the confrontation at the shop, I arrived early on a Tuesday morning to find Lucas already there. He had opened up, run the compressor, and was underneath a neighbor's pickup with a socket wrench, humming something I did not recognize. The sight of it hit me somewhere between the chest and the throat, and I stood in the doorway for a moment before walking in. We worked together all morning without saying much. The way good work gets done. After lunch, Lucas disappeared into the back office and returned 40 minutes later, carrying something flat wrapped in a shop towel. He set it on the workbench and unwrapped it slowly. A piece of oak, maybe 18 inches wide and 6 inches tall. He had sanded it smooth and carved the letters himself, deep and clean, the way I had taught him to work wood when he was 12 years old. Beckett and Son. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took it from the workbench and hung it on the wall beside the photograph of my grandfather. Harold Beckett, 1963, grinning in his coveralls. And now this. 3 generations connected by a piece of oak and a craft that had outlasted everything that had tried to end it. Lucas stood beside me looking at it. "Can't you fix it, Dad?" he said quietly. His voice carried the echo of a 10-year-old boy standing over a destroyed bicycle wheel. "You can fix anything." I put my arm around him. "We already did, son," I said. "We already did." The following Saturday, Alma arrived at the shop carrying a foil-covered plate, and Daniela walked in behind her with 2 coffees. We sat in folding chairs in the bay, with the doors open, and the September air coming through, cooling things down for the first time since spring. Alma set the plate in the center and pulled back the foil. Empanadas. Her daughter Isabella's recipe. The one Alma had been making since before Isabella got sick, the one she still made. Because some things you hold on to, not because they help you forget, but because they help you remember. We ate and talked about ordinary things. The weather turning, a new coffee place that had opened on Peoria, Eddie's plan to build a deck for his daughter. Small, comfortable things. The kind of conversation that only happens between people who have been through something hard together and come out the other side knowing each other better. I thought about what it had taken to reach this table. The 9 days underground, the tunnels, and the shelter, and the cold concrete floor. The hours reading emails that dismantled everything I had believed about my marriage. The moment I heard my son's voice crack on a phone in a parking lot, and understood that he was not my enemy, but my mirror. Another person who had loved and trusted, and been used. I do not speak easily about faith. I never have. But I cannot tell this story honestly without saying that there were moments in that shelter when I was certain I was finished. When the evidence felt like too little, and the opposition felt like too much, and the loneliness pressed in from every wall. In those moments, I did not feel alone. Something steadier than my own resolve kept me moving forward when logic said to stop. God placed Alma in my path at the exact moment I needed someone willing to risk everything for the truth. God kept Lucas reachable when every piece of evidence suggested I had already lost him, and when I finally walked back into that garage, God gave me the words and the stillness to say what needed to be said without letting anger turn justice into something smaller than it should have been. I am not a man who ties things up neatly. Life does not work that way. Lucas has hard days in his recovery. The gambling impulse does not disappear because you understand it. Restitution payments are a monthly reminder of choices that cannot be undone. Nadine is in a correctional facility, and I am still processing what 25 years of marriage means when its final chapter is what ours was. There are no clean edges to any of this. But there is this. A shop with 2 names above the door. A son who shows up every morning. A woman named Alma who makes her daughters empanadas and does not let anyone sit alone if she can help it. And a photograph of a man named Harold Beckett who built something from nothing 60 years ago and trusted that someone worth trusting would be there to keep it going. If you have stayed until the end of this story, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment and let me know you are here. You do not have to explain anything. A word is enough. Your presence in this story mattered, and it still does. If what you heard today reached something in you, share it with someone who might need it. Sometimes, the right story finds the right person at exactly the right moment. That is not an accident. And one final note before we close. This story contains dramatized and fictional elements adapted for reflection and storytelling purposes. Some details have been adjusted, and it may not fully mirror real events. If this type of content is not for you, you are welcome to move on. Thank you for watching until the very end.